if we want spirituality and bhakti to stand the test of time, you will be a fool to think that it won't change in the way it's presented over time. Look at like the explosion of bhakti in the West, back in the 60s and 70s, right? We live in a vastly different cultural climate to that time. Problems are still the same, which is why the principles still exist, but the details very different.
I recommend we all have to enter practice as beginners. Always the student, always humble and recognize that I don't know diddly squat about this. Because that's the person that's going to get the most. Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake.
For soul's sake, for soul's sake.
Welcome to another episode of For Soul's Sake. Thank you so much for joining us. A conversation, an opportunity for you, for us, for Keli, for Nāma to get stuck in on candid, honest conversations around Bhakti, around spirituality, around the material world, around the human experience. If any of that interests you, then stick around. We're going to have an incredible conversation based on the Bhagavad Gita, as always, a book which has transformed our lives because it holds truths. Truths that I think are hard to swallow in one sense, but also very beautiful, that will transform our human experience. I'm blabbering on because I've had too much coffee. What do you guys think?
I love the Bhagavad Gita.
Amen to that.
It was a good introduction, I would say.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I wouldn't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Today, we are talking about seeing with equal vision. And we wanted to get stuck in on topics like accepting other cultures in temples, because we see that Vedic culture, Vedic and Eastern and Indian spirituality is being taken up by so many Western-bodied persons. And of course, Keli has been one of those people. So we're going to talk about that. And also even racism within spirituality.
Ooh.
It's going to get deep. So here's the verse for you guys. The translation is from chapter 5, verse 18 of the Bhagavad Gita. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. I don't know many dog-eaters, to be honest, but
No.
an outcast, someone that is eating unimaginable things, sees everyone with equal vision. Thoughts, please.
Very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the extremities of the things just mentioned in that verse, from the dog eater to the dog,
An elephant, a cow.
to elephants, a cat, to Sally down the road. Like,
Sally down the road.
I mean, to see all those people,
Sally down the road.
to see all those people are as equal is very difficult, because we're conditioned with so much perceptions of the shifts and changes in individuals that we meet, right?
Yeah.
From the culture we're from. I used to do this training. I'll tell you about this funny thing, right?
Let's hear it.
I used to do a training on unconscious bias. I used to deliver this training. I delivered it at a bank once. And it was unconscious bias is the biases that we have in our minds that we're unconscious of, essentially, but come through experience as we've grown through life, etc. So there's me. I think I was about, I can't remember how old I was, 28, 29. And I was delivering it to a bunch of bankers at this place. And I said, let's test your unconscious bias first. And I'm going to ask you one question. Knowing what you know of me, which was very little, all they knew that I was a British Asian guy coming here to teach them some training. I said, what do you think I studied at uni? I had their little discussion. They all came out with, I kid you not, finance, IT, law. That was it. And I was like, that's weird. Didn't study any of those. Studied actually motorsport. I studied motorsport engineering. It's something very different. And I said, where did that come from? Why did you think that? And initially they were very, very shy to question themselves on that question. until I started to dive a little deeper. Was it perhaps because you see a lot of people with the same ethnic sort of background as me study their subjects?
Yeah.
Was it some perceptions that you've experienced your own life? And yes, it probably is. But the whole point is you become conscious of it. But this is interesting because, like, and let's open this up, but in the guise of spiritual life and spiritual practices, we can also, like, avoid the unconscious bias that we actually have towards different cultures practicing the same practice as us.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's interesting because when I first came to the Hare Krishna movement,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a politically correct way to say this, and if I say it wrongly, then please correct me because I'm not very politically correct. The white man was seen as more divine than the Indian pilgrim. And that was my bias because I was so amazed that a Western-bodied person, even if it's white, black, you know, Oriental, anyone that wasn't Indian was practicing Krishna Bhakti was outrageous, so outrageous that I respected them so much more. And in one sense, that is true. Like it's like when I look at you, I'm like, bro, you're a Bhakti yogi, and that's nuts.
I had this experience when I was living as a monk, saffron orange robes. I was walking back to our ashram, which was in a very glamorous place called Splot.
I've been there. I wouldn't quite call it glamorous. It was the ghetto of Cardiff.
Oh, you've been there?
Yeah, I used to stay there each year.
Oh my god!
It's about as beautiful as it sounds. Splot. Anyway, that was where our ashram was. But this funny thing happened in the same day. Get this. We had this festival called Rath Yatra, big festival, and I was freshly clean shaven, had my orange robes on and everything. At that time in the world, there was a conflict going on in Myanmar between the Buddhists and I can't remember if it was like Buddhists and Hindus or something like that was going on. The Buddhists and the Muslims, I think, in Myanmar.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking with a guy who'd come to the festival, never experienced Krishna consciousness before, and he said, "Do you ever experience any problems when you're walking out and about with your robes on and everything?" I said, "No, never. Like I've never had it in 3-4 years." And all of a sudden, this guy comes up to me, this Muslim guy, and starts saying, "You Buddhist monk, you're killing all the Muslims in Myanmar, blah blah blah," and like starts really aggressively like hassling me. It's like, what the hell's going on? And anyway, we diffused the situation, and I was freaked out. Firstly, I wasn't a Buddhist at all, but I was just so freaked out that he saw that as my appearance.
Yeah.
Anyway, then we continue walking through Splot, and an Indian man walks out of his house and opens the front door and sees me, and I kid you not, gets on the floor and pays obeisances to me.
Bows down to you.
Yeah, bows down to me.
Far out.
Puts his head on the floor and sees me and thinks like this is a very renowned saintly person or something.
Yeah.
Far out.
So in the space of 20-30 minutes, I got
a
harassed
contrast.
by someone and then revered by someone, all because of my appearance, and neither of them knew me or knew anything about me, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like this point of unconscious bias is really clever because it's like that. It's that idea of don't judge a book by its cover, right? And really, we should get to know the person. But at the end of the day, if you strip everything away, then there's a skeleton there, and you can't tell by looking at the skeleton, was this person American, English, black, white, this religion, that religion. Underneath it all, actually, we are the same.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience racism within, like, in Bhakti circles? Like, because I'm thinking about, there's been a bunch of people that always comment in my posts about how, oh yeah, it's so amazing that you're putting out Hindu Dharma, it's owned by us, but it's going out and all these Western people are appreciating it, but it still belongs to us, you know? It's like, it's our thing, it's not their thing, it's still our thing. So have you ever experienced that racism in the movement, in like Bhakti circles and the Hare Krishna thing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's, I haven't seen it to the degree where it's name calling or
subtle,
like hate crimes or something. Yeah, but you see there is often a predominance put on certain groups of people, and people are treated differently. And I find that fascinating, and I always try and take people. For instance, we can only interact with people given the information we know about them, right?
Yeah.
So we might hear something, but it might be contrary to our own experience of them. But we do see in a community that even in India, there's this temple in Chowpatty, right? Where they have this big flower festival. And this flower festival has been going on for many, many, many years. And now it's gotten to the point where so many Westerners want to be there that for a whole day, it's packed with Westerners. And all of the local people aren't allowed into the temple. So they feel excluded. So they have to have another festival for the locals so they can have their experience.
Yeah.
So it's like, why are we prioritizing this group over that group? And that's how I've seen racism, if you call it that.
I'm going to flip it this way. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's
Have you experienced racism?
Have I experienced racism?
Especially because Bhakti is meant to be seen as you're not the body. With just the verse we read from chapter 5, verse 18. Samadash, we're seeing everyone with equal vision.
I do feel one thing.
Hit me up.
I wouldn't say I've experienced racism in my life. I think I grew up in a melting pot of cultures growing up.
Yeah, me too.
We live in London. It's a very multicultural place, right? So I don't think I've experienced racism. Have I experienced people assuming things about me from my appearance as a British Asian guy? Yes. Have I experienced that within spiritual circles? Yes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Within the first 5 seconds. You must be a British Asian Bhakti yogi, and therefore that means you do X, Y, and Z, and you think like X, Y, and Z.
Like what kind of X, Y, Z?
It could be
you should know how to eat with your hands.
No, it could be things like... Generally, they say and this is actually... this is a cultural observation, in fact. In Eastern cultures, realness and truthfulness, or if you have something wrong with you, it's often covered. They're more shy to come out with bearing their heart. Repressed, yeah. Or in Western cultures, most people wear their hearts in the sleeves. Very open, very straightforward, very real. In Eastern cultures, because of the things there's a lot of respect, honor, integrity, loyalty, all of these factors, especially in Japanese culture, if you see. Interesting fact here, there was a particular Japanese technology company which was actually doing bad for many, many years, losing lots of money. But because they didn't want to be seen as coming across as doing really financially bad, they switched the figures around so it looked like they were succeeding for a number of years, when actually they were going into bankruptcy.
Wow.
So that prestige of honor and respect and hierarchy
no
is
one should know my flaws.
Very prevalent, yeah. And that's where I think the Eastern world can learn a lot from the West, because there is definitely benefit in being very open, honest, and real with yourself and others. Obviously, to a degree, you don't need to tell any Tom, Dick, and Harry your business, right? But I do feel, and I guess for me, identity has been an interesting thing, and maybe for you, I'm not fully Indian. I'm not fully English. I'm this hybrid of both worlds, because when I first went to India properly, when I was on monastic training, I really understood how not Indian I was. It was a massive culture shock. I was like, what is going on? You could see me from I'm the same color as you, but I'm just nothing like you. And actually, I understood I'm more English than I think I am. I'm more of a Londoner than I thought I was. So I think everyone carries that unconscious bias with them, and I have seen it from various other spiritual practitioners, and you practice your devotion in this kind of way, you won't really understand how to relate to the white man or woman, because you're actually I've grown up around white men and white women and black people and Oriental people my whole life. So in fact, I probably couldn't relate so well to, and I don't relate so well to, people who are just truly from India. That becomes a little. I can to a degree. So do you see? It's such an interesting mix. And
what kind of really sparks my interest is that this assumption culture, assuming that because of the color of your skin, you're going to practice in a certain way. it's really interesting. Why? Because I've come to the conclusion that yes, we have our own religions and our own versions of spirituality, and yes, it's also can be categorized as this particular group, like a Western-bodied person will have this particular experience. But then even within that, each Western person has their own experience. And what I've come to the conclusion is that everyone is practicing their own religion. Like, it's not that it's like sect within a sect within a sect within a sect. Like, we have our own minute experience of even Krishna Bhakti that we're practicing according to. It's like we have our own religion. We've made up our own religion. And it's almost recognizing that even if someone's an Indian person practicing spirituality, even if you're a Chinese person practicing, even if you're Korean, if you're Japanese, Caribbean, whatever, they're all going to have their own nuances, and each one of those persons, even within that clique, is going to have their own. And I think it's totally fine to have different cliques.
You need it. There are cultural differences.
Yeah, it's like having a house, and if that house is named spirituality, and there's different rooms in that house, it's totally fine. So long as we each can create a room for each other person that's like us to also fit in there. What do you reckon?
Yeah. No,
is that wrong? Is that wrong?
Yeah, and I think this is the fact is there is unconscious bias. There is differences and cultural challenges and differences, right? And therefore you need to adapt. And therefore there's a need for that. Yeah. But it does not mean that this is where like the spiritual vision on difference and the fact that people do play different roles is not a point of hierarchy.
No.
It's not that one is better than the other. It's
That's
that you have to
point.
cater the environment for an individual so that they can thrive ultimately in their spiritual journey, right? Whether that means the food you present them with, whether that means the environment, the music, the style, the dress. Yeah. You know?
That's been a big thing for me.
That's
dress.
a huge one. Yeah.
Because, something that I get hit with a lot is I'm presenting kirtan, mantra, chanting, etc., and I'm not wearing the garb of a robed monk. I'm keeping a beard. I'm saying all these Eastern, but then there's a lot of like discrepant people like, no, he's not authentic because he's not keeping to the ancient practices of wearing robes. And that's where it's been really interesting of how we sheep and sorry, I don't know if that's the right word, shepherd and herd people to being, everyone has to look exactly the same, speak exactly the same, talk, eat exactly the same, and then you're considered part of the institution.
Yeah, Krishna says, Patram pushpam palam toyam. He says, if you want to develop a relationship with me, that relationship will be built on offerings of love. And he says, Patram pushpam palam toyam. He says, you can offer me a flower, fruit, a leaf, water, very, very simple things that you can get from anywhere. So you might think, hold on, you're God. Why are you asking for these simple things? You're the proprietor of everything. But Krishna says it's not the leaf, it's not the fruit, it's not the water I'm interested in. It's your love.
Devotion.
It's the offering. So does the man, does the woman, does, the person from this culture and this culture, do they all have a propensity to love? Yes. So if we see with an external vision, then we will categorize in that way. But the Bhakti perspective is that within all of these people is the soul, and the soul's propensity is to offer love. And so that's the qualification. The qualification is, do you have a soul? Yes. Okay, welcome. It's that simple.
And I do feel like when that is truly understood, all of the differences and cultural challenges, they disappear. I don't see the colour. I don't see the gender. I just see the soul. It's like, look, we're both addressing the same goal, right?
Easier said than done, because like you said, there's this unconscious biases because of samskars, because of impressions. We like naturally just like, oh yeah, I've kind of boxed that person before I even know them. This is what they're about. This is how they practice. Because he's got a beard, he's definitely not chanting. He's not chanting his rounds at home. And because he's, or she is got a bob cut and not got, she's not covering her hair, therefore she's not reading the Bhagavatam. And it's just like, come on, man, like have a bit of a broader mind.
It's a funny experience. So when I left the ashram in a couple of years, and I grew a beard, thought, let me stop looking like a little baby.
Nice, yeah.
Grew a bit, just a little bit of a beard.
By the way, if you don't have a beard, you still look nice too.
Yeah. And then I walk into the temple, and there's this old lady who I have so much respect for, and she's lovely. I said, "Why have you grown a beard? What is this?" It's like, this is not approved here. Like, why are you and other guys your age growing beards these days? You look like a hippie. And I was like, it's only like a 5mm beard. It's really not like a hippie beard, man. And I was like,
throwing shade on you, bro.
I was getting the shots, man. Like, after years of like sharing with so much love and like cooking little treats for me and stuff, and now I'm just getting fired shots at. I'm like, I just wanted a bit of a beard.
I was chanting japa in the temple room, so like, you know, chanting on my beads is a practice I have every day. And in the temple room at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the devotee that was sitting next to me just came over and like started tickling my beard. Said, "What's all this? What's all this?" And then I was like, I wanted to cut the conversation short, so I just like turned to him. I was like, "Looks nice," and that was the end of that conversation. I just got to crack on chanting.
Yeah.
You know, spiritual persons, deeply spiritual persons, can see each and every person with their individuality.
Yeah.
And broader than that, a spiritual person, a truly spiritual person, can appreciate God in different forms.
Yeah.
So, like, that's something I had to overcome because I was so secularized, not sectarianized, into thinking my version, my religion, even the way that I practice my bhakti has to be emulated by everyone in the world, and that's a success. But actually, it's beautiful to go into a church. I've not actually been into a mosque.
Yeah.
But I've been to a Gurudwara, been to a Buddhist temple, been to a church, many different types of churches. I went to a Polish church in New York. Oh, you were with me?
Oh, yeah.
We went to a Polish church. And to see God in all of those places is actually, it's first and foremost, is eye-opening. It's like...
I find people that are progressive with their spirituality very attractive.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to those people.
Yeah, me too.
The ones that are very conservative, and I can't vibe with it so much. There's that story of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, incredible Bhakti yogi, very staunch.
Yeah.
This guy is like, Krishna is the way, right? But he would also go into mosques, go into churches, and in Bhakti there's this form of God, the deity, that is put on an altar and dressed and offered flowers and food, and it's elaborate and opulent. And but Bhaktivinoda Thakur would go into other places of worship and say, how beautiful my Lord has manifested in this way for these people, or this way for these people. And I just find that very attractive, if I'm honest, that kind of mindset of inclusivity rather than exclusivity.
Look what they are doing for my Lord.
Yeah.
Look how they like to worship my Lord.
Right. And we hear that's actually the mood of the devotee, is to actually put others first. You know, and in a non-discriminative way. But please, I want you to have this experience in your own way. Like you were saying, everyone has their performing their religion in their own way, because Krishna wants to reciprocate with us as unique individuals. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. There's as many religions as there are people on the planet.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got their own version.
Yeah.
You know?
This raises the question. Now, just go and let's link these two things together.
Is it controversial?
You just talked earlier about India or the East as an area feeling a sense of ownership over Eastern spirituality. Yeah.
I've also felt proud about it sometimes, I have to admit.
No, but but even people residing in the East, right, feeling I own this practice. And it can come across a bit patronizing when the Western world uptake in Eastern practice. Oh, you carry on. That's so nice that you're doing that.
That's cute.
I've had people in my own family say, "Oh, so good you're doing that. Like,
Good try.
You carry on. Yeah. Like you carry on." I'm just like, what? What a rasp, bro. I'm like, I'm really trying my best here, you know? And like I'm just like, it just feels so patronizing. So, and often it's from people who aren't even practicing it themselves.
Right.
but still have this sense of ownership over it. And the Western world often practice it way better and to such a better degree than that we sometimes find that is generally occasionally practiced in the East.
It's definitely an observation. Like if you come to a kirtan at Omnom or any of the kirtans that we perform in London or anywhere in the world nowadays, you'll observe when we say chant with your heart, that people are chanting with their hearts.
Very sincere.
And then if I go to a temple sometimes, I'm like, chant with your heart. Everyone's like, good try, mate. Not happening today. And it's like, they just want to eat their food and get out of there. And it's not, okay, in one sense, maybe that's a criticism, but it's also an observation to give respect to people who are trying, because actually their sincerity might be giving them rise to a purer state of realization. Sometimes we have to enter into practices. Not sometimes, I recommend we all have to enter practice as beginners. Always the student, always humble and recognize that I don't know diddly squat about this, because that's the person that's going to get the most.
There was this term of, I can't remember who said it. They gave this phrase, subtle colonialism.
Yep.
This is a good point.
And I thought that was a really deep phrase, subtle colonialism, because as a Westerner and a white person myself, I feel, like proud in some ways of flying the Krishna flag, but I also have to check myself that I'm not just taking it and doing my own thing with it, but I'm actually being respectful to the tradition, to the culture, to the past teachers, and I feel like that's actually applicable to all cultures at all times. It's not specifically, our problem, but it's everyone's problem. This subtle colonialism, and we have to be careful not to adapt or mutate or morph other practices to suit our own needs, but actually be respectful in our path.
There's a piece around like recognizing what is a detail and what's a principle. And I think so long as we propagate, promote, live by the principles of what a particular practice is like sharing, the detail we can differ. And I think too many of us find that there's a blur between the detail and the principle, and therefore we say, no, because you dress like this, therefore you are not following the principle. There's a difference between principle and detail. I think exactly what you're saying. For things to last, and for example, for spirituality in the Vedic form, the chanting of divine names, for that to continue going on in an authentic way, we have to live by the principles that are offered in the scripture, rather than just coming up with the principles and coming up with details and calling those principles. People ask me all the time, actually, like, how can I chant like you? Like, how do I get exactly what you're doing? How can I do that? I'm like, no, do it in your way. Like, just make sure you live by the principles.
Srila Prabhupada, he actually always said to his disciples, he goes, just, essentially saying, paraphrasing here, but don't try to speak like me, just say it in your own language. Say it, be you while you say it, right? There's a particular thing around that. And this is the thing, if we want spirituality and bhakti to stand the test of time, you will be a fool to think that it won't change in the way it's presented over time. Look at like the explosion of bhakti in the West back in the 60s and 70s, right? We live in a vastly different cultural climate to that time. Problems are still the same, which is why the principles still exist, but the details very different,
Yeah. There's also something that I wanted to discuss today about India, and I guess it's only because I can speak from my experience, so that's why I'm going with India, adopting Western practices and Western civilization, i.e. the UK, the US, mainland Europe, adopting Eastern spiritual practices. Let's focus on the India thing, because I think that's a really interesting topic. What do you guys feel about India becoming more westernized?
Do you know what? I was shocked. This year I went to Mumbai in January, and...
Is this what I think you're going to say?
I don't know.
All right, let's hear it.
I feel like there's a difference between Delhi airport and Mumbai airport. I don't know. But January this year, I walk out of Mumbai airport, and what's the first thing I see? Burger King. Right? So, I mean, I have enough knowledge to understand what the situation is in the world. But if I was a classic Westerner on a spiritual journey, I'm going to go to India and find myself, I would be so shocked to walk out of Mumbai airport and be confronted with Burger King, Starbucks, Louis Vuitton, whatever, all these brands. It would just be shocking for me, you know. I've come to the land of spirituality, and here I am, like, seeing everything I've just left back home.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, I remember also seeing similar things. So here's me on like my start of my monastic journey and training, walking through the streets of Mumbai. This was maybe back in, when was this? I don't know, like 2013, 2014. I see a massive poster, burger and a pint, 400 like rupees.
No way.
Burger and a pint. It's something I see at Wetherspoons down my road. Like, it's literally something I see at Wetherspoons. Burger and a pint. Yeah, burger and a pint.
Even they use the word pint.
Yeah, literally. But even like a lot of this, like, you know, more traditional people in Mumbai were telling me, they go, we're very like, there's a lot of things we're just not used to. There's guys and girls holding hands, being quite intimate in the parks. We don't see that. That never used to happen in India. They're holding hands. We're being very like publicly affectionate and
PDAs.
All that. Yeah, PDA, man. Plenty of PDA happening in Mumbai on the beach and this, that, the other. And they're just like, we're not used to this in our culture. More than that, I was at the Temple restaurant one day.
I don't think I'm used to that. As a Westerner living in Goa, I wouldn't be used to that.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. But I'll tell you why. And this is my observation, is that when it happens in the East, it happens more grossly. It happens to a more of an extreme, right? It's very normal in the West. And everyone's kind of over it. It's like, it's just normal. But when it's there, it's like, I have this opportunity, and the contrast is seen a lot more.
Right.
Right.
There's a juxtaposition.
Very big juxtaposition.
It's like when I went to New York, and I didn't know that cannabis was legalized in New York City.
Okay.
And so just seeing how openly it was being smoked and distributed, I was like, this is raw. Like, I can't understand like why this is happening here. It's the juxtaposition, because I'm not used to seeing it in. You don't expect it of the East almost, right?
Yeah.
But that's where it's interesting, because I value, like, yes, take some of the things from Western culture and you know, do what you need to do to grow the economy and whatnot, but do it with the warning in hand, recognizing and seeing what becomes of Western civilization. Like, I don't know if India has yet acknowledged the possibility of addiction crisis, for example.
The same things that have destroyed this society.
That we're going to the East for.
Yeah, that we thought in the name of liberalism and freedom have just destroyed Western society.
Yeah.
And it happens, you know, because there's been so much restraint in the East over it.
Right.
When they do get their hands over it, it becomes like a free-for-all. Let's go.
Right.
It's scary. And it's scary for what it means for the jewel of spirituality in the East, actually.
And in the West, we're here like, please do not take this culture. This
warning.
We've done it. Yeah, this is not working out.
Yeah.
We want to be more like you.
Yeah. It's funny about.
Yeah, show up to the party with caution.
Yeah, big time.
Anyway, I feel like this has been a great episode. We've talked about equality, we've talked about racism, specifically in Bhakti and the circles that we're experiencing. And even Eastern countries taking up Western culture. I think it's been an interesting conversation. Any closing words from either of you?
All good, just happy to be here. Look forward to next time.
Yeah.
Something I'm taking from it is that I'd like to live with the meditation that within each person there's a soul, and try and see that before seeing the externals. I think that's something I'd like to try and practice. It's a sadhana. Let's see.
Try and catch your assumption.
Yeah.
Ding dong. Love it.
Assuming.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. See you on the next one. For soul's sake, subscribe. Drop us a comment for soul's sake. Peace out. If you love this podcast, you'll love my interview with Shivani Powell on the importance of accepting and embracing others without judgment. Check it out.
With a knife, you can kill someone. You can hurt someone. You can harm someone. You can also use that knife to chop fruits and vegetables to eat. And also, you can use that knife by a surgeon to save someone's life.
Yeah.
And so with money, it's not a bad thing. It depends how you use it and how you show it.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think that there's also, we shouldn't pass judgment on people who choose to live in a big house or who choose to buy nice things or to choose to go out, because at the end of the day, I think we believe that if you're a monk, if you're spiritual, if you're this, if you're a woman, you're a man, this is the life you should lead.